Hi, everybody. It's Michelle at Living Blue in Texas. Today, I am with Jesse Ringness. He is the Democrat running for House District 66, and that is in Collin County. Jesse, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about who you are?
Yeah, my name is Jesse Ringness. I just turned 31 in December. This is my dog. I'm an animal lover, animal advocate. I've got 3 dogs. I've got fish tanks. I could go on. I've got a little mini zoo, but I love animals. As you can tell, he's wanting some attention. But here, go sit down. Go sit down. But I just turned 31. I run a YouTube channel. I have a bachelor's degree in film. I went to school out in Florida, so I lived there for 2 years. It was an accelerated program, so we had about 80 course hours a month. So instead of having like several classes, we had about 2 classes a month. It was like a strong focus, and then when that class was complete, we would go on to the next. So I'm versed in a lot of different things, whether it's animals, whether it's social media,
YouTube, filmmaking.
YouTube, filmmaking, things like that. And then I moved to California to pursue a career in film. I loved the beaches. I love the sunsets. It was a great place, but it's also different. You know, when you're born and raised in Texas, you got to come back home. So I ended up coming back home. But let me rewind a little bit. Before that, I've been a caretaker pretty much my entire life. My mom was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 1997, and for the first 5, 6, 7 years, it was just she was taking meds. She had to do shots in her arms and her legs. I would help her, and then over time, it progressed to her walking with a cane, then a walker. Then about 10 years ago, she started to go from a walker to about a wheelchair, and then it was an automatic wheelchair. So I am very familiar with the troubles in the healthcare industry. I'm very familiar with the struggle that so many people have. I know that my plight is not different than a lot of people. I know there are people who struggle working jobs, working retail jobs, because they have to be able to be flexible and run home when you get that call that you need help. um, so that's one of the reasons that I started to get into politics. Is over the last 4 to 5 years, I just really saw my mom go downhill. I saw the price of healthcare. I saw everything that happened in the last 4 years. um, and so I've just been running my YouTube channel. It's not a crazy big YouTube channel. I just document things I love. So my animals, I document events around town. And then over the past couple of years, I really started documenting protests and things that really interested me in the realm of social. um, so that's about where I am right now. I decided to run because I I'm ready for a change. My YouTube channel is called Be the Change. I grew up in Texas. I'm very familiar with I've got family that are strong Republicans. I've got family in the police force. I'm very familiar with the way Texas is, and I love Texas. I love Texas, but I do think we need to see some changes.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm
Well,
here.
okay. And so, healthcare, you bring it up. Your mom, obviously has gone through a whole lot. Right now in Texas, there are about 6 million people who don't have access to healthcare and health insurance. An average of 740 people die in Texas every year because they don't have access to healthcare. What do you think needs to be done from the state house to make sure that everybody has, the quality healthcare that they need?
It's a tough question because there's so many avenues that I feel need to be looked at or adjusted. Um, Obviously, we need to expand Medicare, Medicaid, social programs that help people in need. I also feel like insurance companies need to take a look at, my mom was lucky. She had organizations that would give her grants, whether it was hundreds of
Like
thousands,
nonprofits.
yeah, whether
Yeah.
it was hundreds of thousands of dollars to pay for medicine. That's just not wrong, because these companies are profiting.
Yeah.
Um, so there's a lot of things. I don't know if I can really name off like a list of this, and this, but I do know that it needs to be affordable. We need affordable healthcare for all. And that's what I will work towards, however we can get that.
Okay. So, another thing that you mentioned is protests. I think that, it's important to talk about, some of the social issues and some of the political issues that have been going on, specifically within Collin County over, maybe these last 2 years. You had earlier this year, last year, I guess we're in 2022 now, you had the murder of Marvin Scott III, which, to my knowledge, nobody has still been charged. None of the guards have been charged. What do you think the breakdown was, specifically in this case? But, this case is really not an uncommon case. It's something that we see a lot of in Texas, in America. People get arrested for low-level crimes, misdemeanors, and either, wind up in jail for a really long time, or shot by the police, or, like in Marvin's case, he didn't make it out of the jail. So what do you think should be done, as far as that situation goes, to make sure a situation like that doesn't happen again?
Well, there's several avenues there as well. I'm very familiar with the Marvin Scott case. Unfortunately, they took it to a grand jury, and the grand jury decided not to charge any of the officers, even though the coroner said that it was a homicide. Homicides are not an accident. That is, like you said, it's a murder. But because of the justice system, they got off. Now, I'm very saddened about the situation. It angered me. It called me to action the beginning of last year, where I was going out and I was protesting. I was documenting other people protesting. They would go to the jail, they would leave signs and balloons and streamers, and they weren't lighting things on fire. They weren't damaging property. They brought chalk and they brought balloons to build a memorial for a man who was murdered over one joint. So medical marijuana should be legal, I believe, 100%. I know about 4 or 5 years ago, I reached out to a company in Texas that was beginning the groundbreaking of it, and asked for help from my mom, and they said, no, it's not, it's this, and this, and there's all these red tape. So we never got to, in Texas, I never had the option to have medical marijuana for my mom, but medical 100% should be legal. I also think recreational should be legal, but I might get a little, slack for this, but I will say, I do agree that there needs to be, just like cigarettes, the smoking age should be 21. I've had many situations where I know people who are, I guess, dependent on substances, and it affects their lives. So I do think that responsibility is needed, 100%, but I think having a legal smoking age of 21 would be very beneficial. Medical marijuana in Texas is needed. How many states now in America are
30 or something? Yeah.
So if that was legal, then we wouldn't have these misdemeanor stops where people are getting murdered. Their lives are being taken from them.
Right.
So that would be one thing. I also think police, which I know some districts have started to slow down on, I guess, processing or certain stops like this. They've decided to let go, or they're starting to ease up on some of the punishment, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think that also could be another avenue, that if we just take a look, even if this happens before we legalize, if police forces say, okay, I realize that alcohol is legal and there are how many people that die a year, but pot is different. And I understand that everyone has a different stance on it, and I respect your stance, because drugs are drugs at the end of the day. But there are health benefits. And when it comes to the criminal justice reform, we need so much criminal justice reform.
Yeah.
We need strong mental health. For instance, I'm not going to throw the police force under the bus, but I know not this winter, but last winter, there was a man who was stopped and arrested for walking in the snow in the street. And I was like, I've been in the street.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been in the street all week in the snow. I wasn't stopped. I watched kids running around playing, but yet we're harassing people because I don't know. So I definitely think that we need criminal justice reform. I can't believe what Marvin Scott's family is going through, what they've been through. I've had the pleasure of meeting them one-on-one, spending time with them. They are great people. And I know Marvin was a man of the people. He had a great smile. Every video I've seen of him, and he lived in Frisco. He was a part of my community. I never met him. I never had the pleasure of meeting him, but he was one of us. And the fact that he was stopped in another city and it happened there, you know what I mean? We need to have stronger regulations on what we're doing, because a joint does not equal murder. It doesn't.
Right. It doesn't. Right.
Mental health crisis, when he was in the jail and freaking out because he had 7 or 8 people pulling him, putting a mask over his head. They sprayed him with pepper spray before putting a mask over his head. So all those videos I see of people running around screaming when they're pepper sprayed, they're gasping for air, they're drooling, and they're having a hard time. Now imagine that with a mask and a spit hood, and you've got people pulling you and trying to. I would be freaking out. After seeing so many people being killed unnecessarily, I would be, if I was in his shoes, I would be thinking, I'm dying. So I would be freaking out. So there's a lot I think that we can change.
Yeah, definitely. So Collin County is one of the 4 counties that was chosen for Abbott and Ken Paxton's, sham audit. And they picked Dallas, Houston, or Harris County, Tarrant County, and Collin County. And they said, well, they're the 2 biggest Democratic counties and the 2 biggest Republican counties. Well, Tarrant County flipped blue this last election, and Collin County is on the verge of flipping blue. So, in the last session, what we saw at the Texas House was a all-on-out war against voting rights. If you make it to the Texas House, aside, whatever happens in the Senate from now until then, what do you think needs to be done to make sure that every citizen, every Texan has access to the ballot box?
Well, this redistricting is really concerning. It happens every time. Texas gets redistricted, and then a month to 6 months later, the federal government comes in and says, we see what you did here. We've got to fix it. Without fail, it happens over and over. And it just happened again. They're saying, you've been redistricted. And for my District 66 in particular, before it was District 33, and it was most of Frisco, and then it went up around McKinney, around Allen, to all the far
predominantly white neighborhoods.
Yes, and rural. They cut the cities out. They went completely around. And that's on purpose. They are cutting out specific demographics. There are neighborhoods that they're completely removing on purpose. Now, my district runs up a little bit of Frisco, not even all of Frisco, but it runs up the $5 billion mile. So it's all the businesses. That's on purpose. Then they cut a little bit of Salina and then all the way up to Prosper. So they've done the same thing. They have redistricted it into where it's more rural and less city. So they've cut out most of Frisco to keep District 66 red. And that's just, I mean, it's just cheating. It's like, playing chess and having extra board pieces. It's not fair. And I don't think that, that's something that we should be doing to manipulate elections. I also think being able to vote by mail is crucial. My mom had to do that during the 2020 election because we couldn't have her get out. And there are so many people that either choose to stay home, which is their right because of the pandemic, or they physically are unable to. They're ill, they're elderly, and they have every right to vote just as much as we do, who can walk up and stand in line for 10 minutes to 6 hours, So I think those two things can be looked at for sure.
Yeah. So one bill that actually did not pass in the Texas House this year was that the Republicans wanted people who are disabled to get like a doctor's note or something to say that they were eligible to vote by mail. Do you think that vote by mail should be limited to disabled and elderly, or should everybody have that opportunity?
Everybody should have that opportunity. There's no reason in this day and age that we should be limiting people's ability to vote, no matter what the limit is. While it may benefit more of a population that are elderly or disabled, it does benefit everybody during a pandemic. And here on out, the world's different. We're not going to be blowing on birthday candles anymore. Things are changing. There's no reason to be trying to go backwards and undo things that have been done to help society progress.
Absolutely. So speaking of the pandemic, this morning I saw on New York Times, I think it was, that we're like 450,000 new infections in one day. So the Omicron variant is spreading rapidly. It doesn't look like the COVID virus is going anywhere anytime soon. In the meanwhile, several Republican legislators are pushing Greg Abbott to call a fourth special session to ban mask mandates and ban vaccine mandates. What are your thoughts on both of those two issues, mask and vaccine mandates?
Well, I have documented several protests over the past year regarding concerned parents in Frisco that rallied together, whether it was 100 at a time or a few thousand. They were concerned that Collin County and Frisco was not doing their fair share, whether it was the beginning of the pandemic and they refused to shut down, whether it was Chris Hill basically denying that any of this is reality, whether it was there's just so many things that happened at the beginning that led citizens to realize that they were protecting themselves and businesses and not necessarily us. So over the course of the last couple years, there's been lots of protests from masks and here and on both sides. There's protests here and there, but recently, over the past 4 months, there's been a group of concerned parents who went to the admin building. They marched in front for an hour. It was peaceful, but they came back and they did everything they could to make their voice heard. Doctors showed up, but at the end of the day, Frisco and Collin County are pro-business 100%. And you can't be pro-business and shut down business. Right. So I definitely think that mask mandates should be available. There's no reason why my nephews that live in another city have to wear a mask when they go to school, but kids in my neighborhood don't have to. What's the difference? They still go out, they still have neighbors, they still can share this virus, but yet, you know, good luck with you guys, but we're going to be, it needs to be across the board.
Yeah.
Um, and so, and I'm double vaxxed. I have my flu shot. I've not got my booster yet, but I wear a mask. If I'm not feeling under the weather, or if I'm feeling under the weather, I will wear a mask 100%. If I am in a big crowd, I'm making sure to wear a mask. If I see other people wearing masks and I feel like they would feel more comfortable if I wore a mask, I wear a mask because it doesn't bother me. I worked last year retail through the pandemic and I wore a mask every day. And you know how frustrating it was, but you get over it. And to be working with the general public and have people come in and look at you with such disrespect, treat you poorly because you're trying to, help and do your part.
Yeah.
So I definitely think across the board, we should be able to say this or this and not a free for all. Good luck. I hope the pandemic disappears in 10 years. We need to be serious. We need to take this serious.
Yeah, well, let's hope it doesn't last another 10 years. So, another thing that is really important right now, that's really big right now, is climate change. We saw this last February with our winter storm. We've seen it in the Gulf Coast with flooding and with hurricanes. We saw it in Kentucky a few weeks ago with tornadoes. It is obvious to everybody that we are in a global climate emergency. What do you think can be done from the state legislator to help slow the climate crisis?
Well, energy definitely needs to be looked at. The way we use and abuse our resources, whether it's oil and gas or trees, there are so many things that we do to destroy our planet every day.
Yeah.
And there are ways to mitigate it. We can take things seriously. We can take actions to halt this. There are people that put their lives on the line to stop fracking. There are people that literally are arrested 3 and 4 times because it's that important. And we look around, and this last year, the freeze, I drove around during the worst night of it and documented how Frisco was being affected. And I saw people, walking their dogs in the snow. I saw, people playing, but at the same time, I saw half of my neighborhood without power. And the every single car dealership that I drove by completely lit up like it was the 4th of July. I drove past the Star, the Cowboys Star. The field was lit up. It was the middle of the night, and they're choosing to light empty fields and high rises, and they're taking my neighbor's power.
Yeah.
That's not okay. The climate
So
is
the distributors, the electric distributors, prioritize businesses over residents.
Yes, and they use the guise, which I know it's a fact, but I don't know necessarily what level of truth there is to it. But I understand that certain grid or lines have to be preserved for hospitals. So for instance, I did not personally lose power because there is a hospital in my neighborhood. So I'm assuming I must be on that same line. So in that instance, yes, it benefited me, but still half my neighborhood was out for 3 to 4 days with busting water pipes, people online asking for help.
And hundreds of people died. Hundreds of people died on the winter storm.
They froze to death.
Yeah.
And it's unacceptable. It's something that was preventable. And I just pray to God that this year we don't see the same thing. I hope that everything that they say they have done and all the inspections that they've done, they just released that they completed 300 inspections. I pray that those went well and that we're not being deceived, because 6 months ago they were saying, oh yeah, we promise we're going to be, we're going to inspect like 300 to 600 different facilities this winter.
Yeah.
So you're not going to inspect it before. You're not going to do what you have to do to prepare it. You're going to wait till we get to freezing, the month of December, and start your inspections.
Right.
I get that what they're saying is like they need the cold temperatures to but still there's things that can be looked at and done to prepare.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, the climate's changing. We're seeing more and more disasters. And I think it does boil down to, like I was talking about, business and you know, that struggle that the society has is it is not profitable for everybody. So there
Yeah.
are people that fight against it. But there's technology out there, you know, everyone wants to, you know, say, oh, the windmills. There's windmills in Antarctica and they don't freeze. You
Yeah.
know, there's so many things that Texas is great at excuses because we're the biggest and the best state, right? So we are great at excuses when things go wrong, but we need accountability and we need transparency first.
Absolutely. God, I agree with that so much. And just two quick points. The Texas legislator gave the electric companies or the electric distributors an opportunity to pay $150 and not weatherize their equipment. And the second point was that the frozen windmill thing was a lie. So we do see a lot of lies coming from Republicans, coming from the right. And I think that, that's in DC, that's in Austin, and that's even at our municipal levels. What do you think should be done to, end this cycle of like misinformation and, get to a point where we're working together again as neighbors and communities?
That's tough. I myself have been duped by misinformation. When I was in California in college, it was so saturated. I applied for so many jobs in the film industry, even going to like Craigslist. But there's so many people and they're all fighting for the same positions. And even like Walmarts and Targets aren't hiring because there's so many people. So I just sorry, I lost my train of thought. We were
How do we overcome the prevalence of misinformation? Yeah.
What my point with that is, I got into a real depression. You know, my mom was at home. I left her to go pursue a career so I can, make bukus of money. And I got depressed and I was watching a lot of YouTube. And I'm very familiar with how YouTube is somewhat of a right platform. And
Yes.
I didn't know that at the time, but you'd be interested. And there was a time when I'm a conspiracy theorist. And what I meant by that was like, when my sister was doing a school project about the JFK assassination, they came home and we talked about it at the dinner table and, things like that. So, you'd go on YouTube and you'd search JFK assassination, and then you'd watch a documentary and you're like, wow, that's interesting. Okay. And then like it ends and it pops up and the next video is the earth is flat. And it's like they're promoting you know what I mean? It's not like, you can go down a rabbit hole in an hour or two. And I found myself like trying to be in, like right now, TikTok, there's all these like TikTok detectives. I found myself being like a YouTube detective, trying to figure things out when something would happen or go wrong. And I found myself depressed and angry and not understanding, you know what I mean? Like it affects your mentality. So growing up in Texas, and that was in California. I was being brainwashed in California, and yet they're a blue state. It doesn't matter because it's these platforms that are allowed to run amok and do whatever. So I've definitely been on that other end of like, oh, that's interesting. How did we get here? Whoa, that's crazy, you know? But a lot of people can't stop and say that's crazy. They just
Yeah.
into it and they feed into it and they will accept anything but documentation and fact. And it's like, oh, I heard this and I heard that. And we've got to stop that. I don't know how. It took me a long time to basically become the change. That's why my channel is Be the Change. You know, I grew up in Texas. I grew up around conservatives. I grew up hearing racist jokes. There are things that I grew up not realizing, and then as I expanded myself and, you know, moved to other states and met new people, I was realizing that like there's no point in choosing to be unhappy and choosing to live in this realm of crazy because you're always worried about something, you know? So I decided to be the change, and I started taking things seriously and not, you know, like there was a time that I shared a RT video like 8 years ago. I didn't know it was Russia Today, you know?
Yeah.
But it just got the RT logo. I'm like, ooh, that's crazy. But you know what I mean? Like that's how easy misinformation spreads. And we just saw Marjorie Taylor Greene get suspended from Twitter. And I think that is the best thing that could happen because she constantly is lying to her base and they eat it up. And I feel so bad because these people need help. I needed help. I needed someone to pull me out, and no one did that for me. I had to do it myself. There are so many people, and so I was a conspiracy theorist before conspiracy theory was a thing, right? I stopped that, right? But there are people that over this past 4 years have taken conspiracy theories because there's nothing wrong
To the
with
next level. Yeah.
there's nothing wrong. Like things happen. There are ulterior motives at play. I understand that. And there are conspiracy theories that have turned out to be fact. So I'm all for like aliens are real, you know, because why not? But
The CIA actually might agree with you on that one. I know.
so that, well, you know, speaking of Marjorie Taylor Greene, the conservatives in Frisco, the Frisco conservatives, just brought her here in December and awarded her the Conservative of the Year award.
Oh
They,
my God.
they brought Louis Gohmert, they brought Kyle Rittenhouse, and
Lord.
paraded him around like a puppet. It was disgusting. And my opponent, Matt Shaheen, bought a, I believe, $9,000 table, you know, to support and, you know, be one of the donors of the event. So while I can't speak to my opponent's personality, I mean, I appreciate him stepping up, and I appreciate all the years because he's been in there for several years. He's done several terms. And I'm sure that there are great things that he has done, but his allegiances and his ties are 100% to the far right.
Yeah.
You know, when you look at the city of Frisco, not this past Christmas, but the Christmas before, one of their sponsors was Epic Times,
Oh my
the
God.
alt-right conspiracy YouTube channel.
Yeah. Well, they're also a newspaper too. So do you think that the far right or the alt-right represent Texas?
They represent a lot of the people in Texas who agree with them. They represent people who feel disfranchised because they're used to a certain way of life. They were used to being on top. They're used to being the provider that doesn't have to climb the ladder. You know what I mean? They that and things have changed, and they feel like they're being attacked when it's not. It's everyone deserves a chance, and things are becoming fair and equitable. But they look at that as like a
Attack on them.
attack when it's not, and no one is meaning for it to be. You know, But no, I think that the silent majority does not agree with them. They're just the loudest. They love to scream and yell. They're in that mindset of everyone's out to get them. Every act or disaster is somehow a plot to ruin their life.
Yeah.
And it's just not the truth. It's not the truth.
Yeah.
So, do they represent a lot of people here, but the majority, no. There's a lot of people here that have moved over the last couple of years, that aren't going to necessarily align with their beliefs.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how the next few elections turn out because of the influx of people.
Yeah. I am definitely interested in watching that as well. So we are just about out of time. Tell people, where do they find you online, on social media? Where are you at?
Yeah, so my YouTube channel is Be the Change. I will send you links for that if you'd like to share those. My Facebook is RINGNESS for HD66. And I have an Act Blue as well, so you can go on to that Facebook page. You can make a contribution. I am definitely going to be the underdog. My opponent has all the support, has all of the finances of Austin. He's got all the backing. He's going to have several $1 million to spend on flyers and ads, and I'm going to be the underdog. So any support that you can lend, I would appreciate it. Anybody out there. And just follow my campaign. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. I post video that's fun and light and animals and Christmas lights, and I also post stuff exposing, Collin County. And when something bad happens, I show up and I document it, and I get witnesses. And similar, I know Living Blue, I know you're out there all the time, so it's very important work that I feel like I'm doing. A lot of people look at my work and discredit it, but at the end of the day, it's history. It's happening whether I'm there or not. I'm not planning these protests. When I hear about it on the news, I show up, I document it, and it's history. So I just, follow me. I'm 31. I can tell you I don't know everything. I'm not going to be the perfect person every single day, but I will try my hardest to help be the change that we so desperately need, whether it's from healthcare, whether it's suicide prevention, whether it is mental health, strong mental health, criminal justice reform. There are so many things that Texas has fallen behind, or Republicans have chosen to, women's rights, voting rights, chosen to go back 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So if you live in District 66, vote for me. If you have friends or family in Frisco, Collin County, Salina, Prosper, ask them, what district are you in? Let me show you this candidate. Help get my name out there. People don't know me. My YouTube channel has 600 followers or subscribers. I'm not nobody. I'm nobody, but I'll try to be somebody for you guys. And I'll try to represent everybody, no matter what.
Okay, perfect. Well, I like it. So thank you so much for joining me today. And I look forward to watching your campaign, and we will have to talk again before November.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you having me on today.
Okay, you have a great day.